audio. We want to get YouTube running. So if you guys on TikTok could give me a thumbs up, let Paul know if you can hear me and see me okay. That would be really helpful before we get started. And do we have YouTube going?
YouTube's going. I got the alert. So.
All right, very good.
All three.
All right. So welcome everyone on YouTube. If you guys could let Paul know if you can hear us and see us okay, that would be really helpful. I want to give this a second for a few people to tune in before we go ahead and get started. Let me know when you get a thumbs up.
Okay.
I do want to invite you guys while we wait to check out a free mini class that I have going on tomorrow. Normally on Mondays, I do my Ask Ivy show where I take your personal questions. But this week I've traded it out for a healing class, a cleansing class, 10 signs that your house has paranormal activity or that you're experiencing paranormal activity. With COVID going on, people drinking more depression, increased anxiety, increased paranoia, a lot of problems in general that we've had all throughout 2020. We're seeing a buildup of paranormal activity that's really become quite toxic and out of control, and people aren't educated enough. So Spirit wanted to make it clear I was to replace my Monday show with this class tomorrow. So if you have any issues, feel free to join us. And then on Tuesday, we have a free mini class, Shadow Work. What is it and how do you do it? Okay, so you can find us here on YouTube at Ask Ivy for those. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good on both.
All right, very good. So welcome everyone to our Sunday service, Roots Revival Interfaith. I am your pastor, Ivy Rivera. I'm a psychic medium. We also have with us Reverend Christina Del Rey, our astrologer, Reverend Danny Johnson, our numerologist, and Reverend Paul Casey, healing arts. So today we are talking about part 2 of our series, Faith Versus. Last week was faith versus, what was the first one?
Fear and worry.
Fear. Okay, so last week, and if you missed it, you can find it up on anywhere there are podcasts, as well as here on YouTube at Ask Ivy. So last week was faith versus fear. And how else did we say that?
Fear and worry.
Fear and worry.
Yeah.
This week, we're talking about faith versus emotion, okay? How to have a healthy balance and how to understand when your emotions are of value and when they are toxic to you. So I'm going to open with a quick prayer. And I do want to invite you guys, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Feel free to follow. Halfway through, we will be taking your prayer and healing requests, but it's okay if you want to start posting them now. Paul will be taking them throughout the Sunday service. And we also encourage, through our church, interaction. So if you guys have questions or comments on what we're speaking about, feel free to type that in at any time. Paul will be reading those off to us. So let's take a moment. Holy Spirit, we thank you for being with us today. We appreciate that you're with us every day, leading and guiding, giving strength and wisdom, whether we are paying attention or not. Thank you for your faithfulness. Please help everyone tuning in to listen more clearly over the course of this entire week, to be more mindful of their emotions, help them to strengthen their faith, and to feed the light. And we ask that those that are lost find this recording, that this cross their path at just the right time. Amen. So one of the things I notice if I'm going to teach a class, if I have church service coming up, I always get tested right before. So I tend to be shown by spirit what the curriculum is supposed to look like. And I think, oh, I know a lot about this. I could talk about this. Of course, of course. And I don't always apply it to myself. I don't realize that maybe there are areas that I'm going to be, going through trial with, and that is inevitable. Now, I'm always caught off guard, especially this week with it being Mercury in retrograde. We'll let Christina speak on that a bit, I'm sure. But, it was a funny week for me examining emotions, triggers, my tendency toward being reactionary, angry, having outbursts, not wanting to wait on things, being impatient. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get it now. This is the church service that I'm going to be speaking on. So, one of the things that I noticed this week was it was especially bad with conflict, miscommunications with others. And I do want to blame Mercury in retrograde for that, because that's really what it's about. And for those that are ruled by Gemini or Geminis or Virgos or ruled by Mercury, it may be worse for some people, but it was a constant flow of miscommunication that I had to repeatedly stop and decide, am I going to feed this problem or am I going to just pull back and let it play out however it needs to play out? And so that can get really difficult when you're in the moment. One thing that I want to talk to you guys about today is understanding that the universe is focused very much on character. The universe is focused on integrity. And all karmic payout, all prosperity comes from developing those areas. It comes from law of attraction, manifestation, benefits that are given when they're earned. Now, we live in a society that thinks, it's all about hard work. It's all about career. It's all about money. It's all about what you own or what you do. And the universe doesn't care about any of that. So what we really need to focus on is the truth of the matter and understand that it's in those little moments, those things that are testing you, that determine whether or not you are going to have good karma. It is a decision, and it requires mindfulness in those moments to go high, not low. High vibration, not low vibration. And emotion, okay, human emotion, feelings are often the instigator behind that failure. So one of the important things to look at here is how we can control our emotions, not eliminate, but control our emotions by better understanding them. I think it's really important too to understand that we come from a place of victimhood. We stop being the creator in our story. When we give into emotions, we become reactionary. We let them take over. And we want to feel more self-empowered. It can feel, though, in the heat of the moment, disempowering to not say something back to somebody, to not fight back, to not push your agenda. So we're going to talk first about waiting. I think that one of the keys, okay, again, I was tested with this week. One of the keys to going high, not low, is to give things a minute. Now, when I'm being very mindful, I notice that it's okay. My first test this week, I was out in traffic, but I haven't been driving a lot because of COVID. I haven't gone out a lot. So normally I'm more in control. Road rage is not a huge issue for me. It's annoying. I live in New York. It happens. But it's not something that I feel is out of my hands. Well, this week, I made a turn onto one of the major roadways here, and there were like 4 different lanes of traffic and some turning. There was plenty of room for everybody. I didn't cut anyone off, but the car coming up behind me was speeding. And so when I got to the light, I made the turn, I got out onto the road, and when I stopped at the light, he came up behind me and my first instinct is to put that finger up. And Paul's sitting in the seat like, oh, what's, it's gonna get colorful because I'm not putting it down too quickly. And I reacted to him immediately. I caught myself, I sort of stopped, and I was like, well, that's unusual. I don't normally react so aggressively, or, I at least take a moment to think before I would do something like that. And I was tempted to look at him, to make eye contact, and to actually judge him or provoke it. Like, I wanted to see what someone who does that looked like. And I had a pretty good idea of what this person was going to look like, right? I knew it was probably going to be a guy who was pushing his, truck agenda onto me. So I look, and we make eye contact, and he's blowing kisses. He's blowing kisses at me, and he's giving me the finger back. And I'm like right in it in that moment, just right going for it, up goes the finger again, shouting and yelling. And I'm thinking, it's funny, but it's not, because afterward, I thought about that for the rest of the day. And I thought, what did I really feed? What did I really get out of that? Yes, he was wrong, but, was it right, my reaction to that? And I thought about things like feeding the general energy. What did I put back out into the universe? And is it always healthy to keep things like that in? No, it is not. There's a time and a place. There's also many, many instances where we're tested and we really don't have to react. It didn't fix anything. I still got where I needed to be. He still left and has his issues to deal with. I didn't have to exert that energy. I didn't have to go low. I could have gone high by either ignoring or by waiting. So it's that reactionary issue where I think most people get caught because it does happen quickly. And I thought that was interesting. Now, I also want to talk about, feelings not being truthful. Because a lot of what we feel is fickle. Now, I don't want to say that feelings are without any value whatsoever. We have them for a reason. We are born with emotion and reaction for a reason. It's supposed to keep us safe. It's supposed to help us to defend ourselves. It's not that your reaction to people or this guy coming up from behind me, it's not that it's wrong, but we have to understand when it doesn't hold a lot of value or truth. We have to take it off the pedestal and place it where it really belongs. So a lot of emotion is based on what we want. It's based on what we think we need at the time. And those things are very fickle. So that could change. You may think that you desperately need or want something today, and by Thursday, you could feel like you either don't need it anymore, like you don't want it anymore, or like you want or need something else. This happens all the time. Think of how many times you've decided to go on a diet, okay? Or you were going to start working out. Think of how many times maybe in a relationship and you decided, I'm going to get out of this because it's toxic. But then you went back. Feelings change all the time. So I think part of the ability that we have to control our emotions is to understand how they operate and what they actually are. They're fickle and they're not usually based on the truth. Okay, so we want to understand that wisdom is acting, speaking, and making our decisions from a place of truth and high vibration. That requires faith. That requires that you understand the law of the universe, manifestation, that there is a higher purpose, that there is high and low vibration. This is a real thing. and you have to decide what you want to feed, and you have to be mindful as you go through life. And the minute you're not, here come the tests. Now, I also wanted to talk about this ability that we have to feed and cater to our emotions so terribly, almost like a child. I think of a kid who's having a fit and is throwing a temper tantrum. And I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. And how many parents start off strong and go, you know what? No, you didn't earn that, or that's not healthy, or you already had one. And after being worn down for a few minutes, they cave. How many times, do we see, again, I'll use the example of parents who maybe set some type of a punishment up for a child who definitely needs that structure. But, when you've grounded a child and they're making life miserable in the house for everyone, by the first weekend, even a lot of people may cave on that because they're all going to be in the house together. Nobody's leaving for work. Things get more intense. How many times do we set boundaries and then they're too hard to uphold? So we just say, forget about it. Well, that's catering. That's catering to feelings. We can't be doing that and become structured people with integrity and character. So I think it's important to find ways to distract yourself from whatever it is that is tempting you to look at that emotion and feed that emotion. Here's just a great example. Right before we were coming on for church service, I wasn't feeling well earlier. And so all of a sudden I felt extremely exhausted and I felt like, no, I wanted to go lay down. And I thought, well, maybe, the other reverends could take over service and this and that. And I had a choice. I had just a few minutes to get ready. I got up to the top of the stairs and I had a choice. I could either go to my room and feed and cater to those emotions that had just come out of nowhere, or I could go and get ready and stop thinking about it. And in that moment, I know from training myself what the decision is going to be. I have integrity. When I say I'm going to be somewhere, I'm going to be somewhere. That's it. So you have to catch it quickly and cut it off and replace it with something else. I think this is another area where people tend to spiral out of control because they will try to, tell themselves that it's not harmful to observe the emotion itself. But if I would have gone back into my bed and I would have said, oh, well, 5 more minutes, I would have sunk lower and lower and lower into that desire to shrug off my responsibilities. I would have been even more exhausted. Okay, so sometimes we do have to stop entertaining things. I also want to talk before we pass this over to the other reverends to contribute here, and we'll take some questions and comments. I want to talk to you guys about not spreading it around. So when we're going through something emotionally, I think that the tendency is to talk about it, to analyze it, to just share it. We get mopey faced. We want people to ask us, we lead in. We talk things to death. We tend to immediately want to go onto social media or go to those around us instead of going inward, instead of being introspective, instead of sitting with it, instead of calling in our ancestors, our guides, our angels, God, the universe, asking for support. We want to go out here. That's human nature. But is that the wisest thing to do? Absolutely not. The minute you sense that you are in trouble in your life in general, the minute you sense that you're having some type of emotional turmoil, that is a sign to quiet yourself and to go inward and be with spirit. That is not the time to go out here to everybody else, because that is sort of like catering. It's going to inflame the problem. Right. Now, I love this story too. I saw an interview. I'm obsessed with Mr. Rogers, and I saw an interview with him recently I'd never seen before, where he said that he came home from filming. He came home from a hard day's work, and he had decided to stop by his grandkids' house on the way. And I think they were 10 and 8. And they were in the yard playing with a hose, spraying each other. And I think the nanny was there. And, you know, she was kind of out of it a little bit, trying to stay out so she didn't get wet. But they saw Grandpa, Mr. Rogers, came in the yard, and they were excited to see him, and they wanted to play with him. But he was in a bad mood from having a terrible day. He was very angry. Mr. Rogers, if you don't follow him, he talks a lot about anger and alchemy and converting, right, toxic feelings into positivity and ownership. So he was in the yard, and the grandkids slowly started to threaten, you know, to spray him with the hose. And he had told them no. And, you know, he said they behaved for a minute, but then they were doing it again a minute later, and he yelled at them. And he said, that's it. Everybody put away the water. That's it. And he ruined their day. He said later he called and he apologized to both of the grandkids. And he said, you know what? I had stuff going on. I was having mad feelings and bad feelings, all kinds of feelings. And I should have gone and sorted that out before I came to your house to ruin your fun and your day. You didn't do anything wrong. And I thought that ownership was a beautiful thing, right? So I think it's so important that we examine when we're spreading it, not masking it and saying, oh, I just want other people's support. I just want other people's input. No, you're spreading it. That's what you're doing. It's not anyone's job the minute you're going through something to come and fix it for you. Let's be honest about where we are and what we're doing. Okay. So owning it, not spreading it. I do want to also make a couple quick suggestions before I let you guys take over here. Remember ultimately that you want to put out positivity in the world. So to control that reaction, or to wait on having a reaction, you know, to be more mindful, to keep it to yourself, to not feed your emotions. All of these things really do transfer back out immediately. And so it's not just about karma. It's not just about your prosperity. It's also about wanting to be, I like to think of it as teams sometime. You know, I want to be on team light. I want to feed the light. I don't want to feed dark energy around me. So just keep that in mind. That can make it a little easier sometimes. I would also suggest that if you are in the heat of the moment, and especially for those of you who have trauma reactions and things like this, whether it's abuse or, you know, neglect in your childhood, maybe you were in an abusive relationship, you have PTSD, whatever it is, we can have these reactions that are so intense that we literally feel like we cannot make a decision, like something else takes over us. What you can do is pay attention to your breathing. I would highly suggest that you are breathing in for 20 seconds and out for 20 seconds. Just focus on that until the overwhelming feeling of needing to react leaves you, okay? Or your anxiety has calmed down a bit, because everything passes. That's all feelings are, okay? They're just passing through. So we don't want to give them any more power than they should have, okay? Stick to faith. It does work. And that's how we graduate. That's how we level up. All right. So I want to open this up to you guys. Where did you want to go with this today?
Christine, do you want to
go? You can go. Go ahead.
Okay. So when thinking about and reflecting on our conversation about faith versus emotion and faith and emotion, when asking spirit and connecting with spirit with regard to our topic, it really kind of aligns with everything that you were just saying, in that when we are intentional about controlling our emotion, like when we recognize that there are feelings coming up, this is a lot, and we want to control them, part of it feels like the faith in our faith journey is to have faith that we're not alone in controlling the emotion themselves. So when we say, okay, I'm having this moment, but I need help. I need help controlling this. It's so affirming to remember that when we are intentional about controlling the emotion, that we have God, we have our ancestors, we have guides who, when we reach out to them and say, I can't do this on my own, but I want to, they will show up like that And they will, I mean, all of a sudden you'll have like, thoughts of puppies and hot chocolate and, good things. And, they'll help. They'll be right there. But it's like we have to reach out for the help ourselves, just like how you always describe how there are rules, in the universe. And it's like they can't do it for us. Like they can't make the choice for us. We have to make the choice. But the second we make the choice and we say, I don't want this to control me, but I need help, they'll be there. They'll definitely be there. And it feels like like faith is a relationship, and faith is, there's like maturity in faith, and we mature in our faith, just like in terms of leveling up. And in this leveling up, we can engage. Part of like that maturity process in our faith is the asking questions. One of like the most precious things about my faith is asking questions, asking the why questions. It's like, okay, I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to do what I'm told. Okay, but why? And I turn into like that little needling 3-year-old. And it's like, okay, Spirit, why? And sometimes I'm given answers. Sometimes I'm told to sit down and mind my business. And whatever the answer is, I'm grateful for it, but that is a part of that faith journey as well. And so that to remember that when we are in those moments where we are intentional about it, and we know that we can, if we could handle it, if it was that easy, everybody would do it, and it would be that much more seamless. And it's okay to say that we don't have the capacity at that moment to fully do it on our own. And it's good to remember that we're never expected to. Like nobody said that we had to do it on our own, That's
right. That's right. And I love how you worded that if it was that easy, everyone would do it all the time and we wouldn't even be having this discussion. There isn't anything we're put on earth to do that we aren't given tools for. I think, again, of good parenting on this topic of emotion. Good parenting, right? Good parenting is equipping your children to maintain themselves and have critical thinking skills, and to use, self-control, and to understand, identify when it's called for. And it's the same thing with us here on earth. We have a protector guide. We have a set of guides. We have ancestors watching over us. We have 2 guardian angels appointed to us, and in moments when things get really heated and you're really being tested and, you're really at risk of your emotions taking over and doing damage to your life, that's a time to call in those protectors. That protector angel, that protector guide, they're there all the time. And we need to remember why that is. Yes. I love that.
So I love that, Danny. That was great advice. And I'm definitely going to use that because I do tend to not ask, not realize that I can ask. So that's really good advice. When we think about feelings with astrology, the moon really governs feelings, and the moon is very changeable. It's the quickest planet. So when you have feelings, you have them, like, Ivy said, you have them for a reason. You need to acknowledge your feelings and accept your feelings and be aware that they're there, but you also have to be aware that they're going to change. And it's like, if you, and I love what you said about catching it quickly and cutting it off. I also really never thought about that either. Different triggers trigger you in a different way, because like I am triggered driving, especially when somebody is in the wrong and they're just being a jerk to be a jerk, because that they've had a bad day and they're going to take it out on you. And then there's other times where I'm triggered where I see red, and it's almost like there's times when I can stand back from it, and then there's times when it's like red and you just can't, like you just react. So when you're deciding where your feelings come, where you have to ask yourself, where are these feelings coming from? Is it coming from fear? Is it coming from conditioning, from childhood? Or is it coming from survival? Do I have to act right now to survive? Because that's a possibility too. there's a possibility that maybe you do have to react to survive a situation. But if that's not the case, you have to really kind of identify that. And with intuition, because feelings and intuition are different, with intuition, it's more of a peaceful knowing, and a feeling is more, it's not as quiet. It's very loud. So if you have a very loud feeling, it's likely that it's feeling and it's going to change. And when we talk about the ego too, like exactly what you said, and I've been studying this all week. So, and without you telling me that this is what we were talking about, I've been taking notes on it and stuff. But when we react to something and we want to strengthen it, we'll go tell our friend, we'll call up our friend and be like, can you believe that this guy, blah, blah, blah. And then that makes us feel more right. We were right. You know what I mean? And yes, maybe we were right, but being right is not who we are. We're spiritual beings, and we're going to try to go to the higher. So we don't want to strengthen the false sense of self. Like when we have that Gucci bag, we're not that Gucci bag. We're not that car. We're all actually the same. We're all the same consciousness. So, you have to also remember that that's another human being there. And yes, you need the boundaries, because they can't treat you in a certain way, but it's very difficult, and I struggle with it as well. So it's, I'm not exactly preaching here. I'm just saying that, we can all try not to be controlled by a situation, by reacting, at least not reacting right away. Or if we do react, maybe do it privately and then decide on a better course of action. But the moon is just very, it's all over the place. And people who are Cancers will know this, or have significant Cancer energy, that we're moody. We go all up and down, and we're all around. And so the moon is known for being changeable. So, remember that you're going to come back to, because I remember as a kid not knowing, having a boyfriend or something, getting so mad and cutting him off and cutting this off and cutting them, I'm done. And 3 hours later, you're like, oh, I really miss him. I'm going to call him. You know what I mean? Like, so you can't just react to your feelings. Like, it's not true. Like, feelings can lie to you.
Yes. And I like that you brought up the moon, because when we look at the cycles of the moon, we're talking 4 separate cycles just in a 30-day period.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in 30 days, you have become 4 different emotional characters.
Yeah. It's
and
it changes
what week it is of the month, like prone to whatever phase the moon is pulling out.
Right. And it's in the different sign every day. So it's just like, it's so changeable. So you can't rely on that. You know what I mean? And it's, we have to remember that, there's two dimensions of who we are. We are having a human experience, and we're having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings. So we have to remember that, we're learning lessons in the human, but we still have to connect to the spirit part to go higher.
I want to play off of that a bit too. And what you said earlier about, even though someone like the traffic example, right? Someone with road rage, someone acting like a lunatic, you don't care in that moment. You don't think of them as a person, because they're not acting like a feeling human being, right? They're so out of control. You just see them as the enemy or something to protect yourself against. So when you said we have to remember they're still people, I have found that to also be an effective tool to use, no matter how ridiculous or outrageous I feel their behavior is, to step into their shoes for a minute and to see and feel things the way they're seeing and feeling things. It's sort of like the trick that we use in classes here. My higher mind wants to talk to your higher mind. My inner child wants to play with your inner child. When you can see from their perspective It doesn't make it any more right or good, but it somehow is oddly calming enough that it buys you time to wait on your reaction or choose not to react at all. It does help to go into that position. I also want to talk about a couple classes up here on YouTube, if you go to the playlist, that can help you with what both of the girls were saying. The still small voice is one of those classes. Paul will be putting it here in the comments. That helps you to understand when your intuition is genuinely talking to you, when it is spirit genuinely talking to you. What's the difference? Because our thoughts are loud. And when we want to tap in with true wisdom in the universe and what is best, it doesn't come at you like a punch in the face. It doesn't run you over. It is quiet. It is still. It is peaceful. And so that will help you to identify. We have another one called feelings versus intuition. Again, up on the playlist, that will help you to identify, well, how do I know, when it really is my gut instinct versus something fickle like my feelings, right? Because we've been told, go with your bliss. We've been told, feed your feelings, go with your heart. Those are bad pieces of advice. That really does not work in the long term. So you do need to get educated on what the differences are, and that will help a lot.
I think too, we should probably at some point do a class on this or something, but people don't really get how to, I'm in a challenging situation right now, and the small amount of people who know my situation are like, wow, like, why aren't you like totally freaking out? And and I'm very calm, and it has to do with my faith and my spiritual practices and connecting with silence and transcending the mind and and being at peace. And I just think that people don't do that enough, and they really need to learn how to do that. And you spoke about parenting before, and I was thinking about it, and I love my kids. To me, they're the greatest kids that ever in the whole world. And one thing that I did with them was, you ever walk into a house and the TV's always on, or the internet's always on? I didn't want that for my kids. Not that they don't watch TV, because they watch plenty of TV, trust me. But I used to cut it off at we'd have a couple hours in the morning. I'd cut it off. No more TV. We're gonna be in silence. Not silence, but so we could hear each other think, so we can hear our thoughts. And, then later on at night, we would have the TV again, or, maybe during the day, if we were really bored, we would watch a movie together. But it's important just to have time in the house where there's not blaring music, where there's not, and to be able to hear yourself, because you can't do these things unless it's more still and peaceful inside. So those are things that's really important. And the harder of a time you're having, the more you should be sitting in stillness.
It's true. That's so true. And that pent up energy really does end up being aggression or emotional meltdowns. It really does. That inability to process what you're feeling and thinking and what has happened over the course of the day. There are some of us that don't stop for entire months, and we just don't even know who we are anymore. I love that mindfulness. I did the same thing, Christina. Like, we don't have a TV in the living room. You want to have something in your room, just designate time for that. But that loud, the bright lights, the loud noise coming at you all the time, it is something we need to start living without. But again, a lot of people are doing it to distract. They don't want to face those emotions. They don't want to face those thoughts. They don't want to face who they are, what they're going through. So they distract with that. It's no different than being on your phone all the time.
It's an addiction. It's an addiction.
It is. It's avoidance. We have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. We need to be mindful and still and admit where we are. It's okay. Paul, did you have something you wanted to say on that?
Yeah. I thought it was Christina who mentioned reaction, like survival reaction kind of with emotions. And I also like the part she just brought up with quieting down. So like the two different things here, and it's like that we had to, it's just such this old holdover, like animalistic thing, right? You react because you have to. And then like you hit the point where society kind of levels out and you have the ability to calm down and think and create art, so you have this, like you're talking about with this silence here. And it's like there's this old piece of us that we kind of got away from, which was good. You need it in bits and pieces. It's like microbursts, you only need it sometimes. But since it's been with us so long, everyone just still relies on it and still relies on that because, they stay, on this left side of the brain, where in the right side, you can kind of, all right, let me take a second, figure it out. It's like having the time, like you said, Christina, to quiet, to listen, or, have art, or something like that, where, it showed that we were kind of split, and made both sides of our brains. You have both, and you can kind of see where it came out. But this emotion and everything just is so hard to, I guess, conquer, because it's so powerful and so fierce. It's really hard to just say, okay, well, I'm gonna just focus on, slow down and focus, because I am a thinking man. I have art. I can do all these things. But you're still primal, and it's just like Ivy said, this guy rides up on your bumper and the finger goes up. It's, instead of, it can get triggered, and it's amazingly powerful. But I feel like, again, like what you guys are saying, it's like when you need it, microbursts, but you can't really rely on it too much because it's, I feel outdated in the way our society is. It's just like you have so much more going on in, interactions, in the way everybody's just like a whole, that it doesn't work so well. And it just like is trying to fight through all the time,
Well, and I would imagine that as a guy, you've experienced probably more of that than even us girls have, right? Because guys are trained to be reactionary. It's like what you didn't fight back, what you didn't hit back, and then you're harassed for that. I think we need to think of things like police brutality, and we need to think of different situations where maybe even your boss at work, if you're in a toxic work environment, is instigating. Think of how your emotions can be used against you. It is a weapon. It is something to take seriously. Until we can have faith that there is something greater than this feeling of reaction, we're not going to get over it. You have to believe that there is a higher purpose to it and that you can twist it and turn it and use it to your advantage. You have to outsmart the system.
Yeah, and like if someone's giving you emotions and you're not, like say with the boss or something, and you're not feeling them, I picture like, I don't know if it's like school, there's a school movie, but the kid didn't react and his friends like busted on him for it. So then to make up for it, he just like picked on an innocent kid, right. And like there's such this transfer effect that goes the complete opposite way, once someone's forced to do something, like even if they were, purely in the right to not, and someone, everyone else pushes them, and it's tough. If they could only, it's the peer pressure part of it too, because they didn't.
100%. It's everyone, around you is doing it. If it's the norm, then yeah. Christina, you were going to say something too?
One other thing, of course, I'm thinking of a time where I reacted this week, where I just yelled at somebody. It's just, like there's just sometimes, and most of the time I know when I'm going to be triggered because I can see it in the planets. And sometimes that helps and sometimes it doesn't. But one thing that I have started to do too is stand outside of myself and watch myself react and say, do I like what I see? Am I proud of that? And if the answer is no, then I probably need to change that.
And for those of you that are tuning in and you're like, oh, wow, that like never happens to me. So, you can train yourself to have those behaviors. If you weren't raised, if your parents, your teachers, whatever, you weren't raised to do that on the regular, it may not come naturally to you. If you were always allowed to just have your way and you were right, you were entitled to that thing, you can still train yourself to habitually stop and do exactly what she said. Pull back and be like, do I like the way I'm behaving right now? What is it feeding? And make a decision, right? Do we have questions and comments coming in here?
Excuse me. We got a comment from Liz who said...
okay, well, hold on. Let's wait on that. I do want to invite you guys at this time, if you would like to leave a donation for Roots Revival Church, we certainly appreciate it. There are donation buttons there. We would also encourage you at this time to type in your prayer requests or your healing requests. We're going to be getting to them in just a minute. So if you didn't already, type them in. Okay, what do we have, Paul?
Liz said that today I was precisely journaling about the intensity of feelings when I was a child. And when the emotions took control, it seemed like there was no tomorrow.
Oh, yes. So emotions can be so overwhelming. It's funny that kids have come up so much in this, topic today, because that really is where we see it. And when we yell at another adult, it's like, you're being a child, you're being childlike. Like, that's the ultimate offense when we talk about emotions, right? Is that someone's out of control. Yet we're looking at a sea of people all around us internationally that do appear to be out of control with their emotions. So it's like, who's mastering this? Who's steering the ship? And if you think back to when you were a child, or maybe just even recently, where you experienced something that was so overwhelming for you that you felt there was no tomorrow. There was nothing beyond this feeling. It's insatiable. And we have to just remember that there is more. We have to practice it. Yeah.
This one is from Elsie.
Okay.
Says, for the mothers, how do you balance your need for silence and reflection with motherhood?
I just always took space and time for myself. My kids are older now, but I never lost myself to motherhood in that way. I never started to decide that I was going to give up the basics of what I needed to keep my sanity. And there were plenty of times, whether it be financial struggles to having like 3 teenagers all at once. I've gone through the ringer for sure. And being a single mother, it's been a lot, but I was able, I believe, to earn my degree, build these businesses, do everything at once, because I never let go of that. Exactly what you're speaking of. I never decided to completely give in and allow for their needs or their desires or their emotions to take over and take charge. I stayed at the helm and I created space for myself when I needed. When they were smaller, even if I needed to go in the bathroom and have a mental breakdown and just cry and let it out. I think of this episode of Sex and the City. If you guys have ever seen it, where Charlotte was making cupcakes and the one baby screaming in the high chair and the other one came and she put red paint all over Charlotte's butt. She had this beautiful vintage cream skirt on, and the little girl put these red and just destroyed her outfit. Well, what did she do? And then when she went in the closet and cried. Who doesn't do that? And that's okay. I think half of it is not feeling guilt about the way that you're losing it. No one could have kids coming at you all the time, that much noise and disruption and need and demand, and not lose it. It's okay to lose it, but you have to prioritize that you are processing every day throughout the day. Another common thing that I did always is to cleanse. I make sure I'm taking what pent up energy is in here and I'm getting it out. I don't let things build like that. What about you guys?
It's funny because this was huge for me because I had, Kylie, who my other daughter, who was, she cried all the time and I just had to get away. So every day when my husband would get home, I would hand her off and I would go to Starbucks and I would do something that fed my soul, which was read. So maybe 45 minutes, half hour at Starbucks was enough for me to be able to have another day, to get through another day. And I have 2 children and I did that until they were really a lot older. I know it's a pandemic now, but Starbucks saved me. We have Barnes and Noble Starbucks here. I would just go find a book and I would sit down and I would read it and it would just feed me enough to be able to keep going. And that's what you have to do. You have to find something for yourself, feed your soul a little bit. And then you can it's like you can go back in the ring, you're ready.
I'm surprised we didn't meet there because that Starbucks, Barnes and Noble, I earned a lot of my degree in there, and then the other one on Delaware. I think there's so much to taking that moment and having a cup of tea or a cup of coffee. And like as a single mom, I couldn't always get out and like maybe even go there because I didn't have a husband helping or whatever, but I could make it in my house.
Yeah.
I could say, go make your own sandwich. Go make your own bowl of cereal. No, go do something quietly over there. I need a moment. We have to stop the martyrdom sometimes and say, I need this, or we're all going down with the ship, I love that. Did we have another one?
No, the questions are good.
Okay.
Healing requests are coming in.
We are into healing. So I don't know if you guys wanted to add anything more to this conversation before we get into the healing and prayer requests upon closing.
One final thought that I'd like to share that came through when reflecting on our topic today is the same way that God, the universe, spirit, helps us and supports us in when we need a little bit of help controlling our emotion. They also will watch us as we are in that process when we receive the help, and when we are in that process, they'll also watch to see how we react. Because I know I've shared before, and thankful to Christina for pointing this out to me, having 7 planets in fire. There are moments where I'm tested. There are moments where it's just like I am like a hot ball of fire, and it's like, okay, I'm trying to control it, and all of a sudden, at the corner of my eye, I see an ancestor, I see my Saint Mother, I see somebody over there smirking, like, "What are you gonna do?" And it's just like, okay, all right, fine, okay, all right. So they, in the same way, they will. They've got our back in so many ways, in some comical ways too. So they're ever present, and we're always being watched, always. So that's they reminded me of that, and I was like, oh yeah, that's true.
My aunt who passed, who I always thought of more as a mother than anything, I will sometimes hear her say, "Don't be a piss pot." You feel someone being there, and then you hear, "Don't be a piss pot." It just simple things. We just have to listen and pay attention in those moments. You're so right. Like, we are never alone. And sometimes it's something as simple as that. Snap you right back into reality.
Yes. Exactly.
Hilarious. Good. Anyone else want to comment on this?
Yeah, I want to add that it's weird for like myself, who kind of, when I was younger, I was more faithful, and then disappeared, and then it came back in very recently, kind of around the time when I was like, learning more about my emotions too. I kind of pretended they didn't exist for a long time too. But so at the same time, that I'm figuring out each, it's like, there were lots of times where I was just kind of reacting on faith and not acting, as the way I should have. It's like, I'm just going to let that sit because F that, and it's like, but at that time, it's kind of like how we were talking, that people would be like, well, why didn't you do that? And I'm like, I didn't need to, but then you feel, did I not do it right? And, the whole time I was in the right. So it's like kind of going backwards now, piecing together things. But it's, to find out that I was closer, than I had thought before to, reacting how I should, it's really, this class, right, or this service tonight is really eye-opening for for my reactions and things in the past. So
we're unlearning. So much of it is unlearning what you've been taught, right? Because the simplicity of you as a child, you knew not to be reactionary. You knew intuitively that wasn't the right behavior, was to let that anger out. But to be told for so many years that you should, there's something wrong with you for not reacting. It is funny how we sometimes just come full circle to who we were in the beginning. It's like we knew it all along. We just got to get back there. I love that.
Yeah. The piss pot term is getting some people. Natalka said,
well, where are my pair of piss pots in the
Natalka
house?
said her grandpa used to say that, and Jill says she hasn't heard that since she was little.
Yeah, I got that one a lot. So let's move into prayers now. Are these going to come up on my screen, or how do we do this?
They will not. I can send you a file over here, or I can read them if you want.
Why don't you read them off? Okay, so Paul will be leading the prayer and healing service. And of course, we invite you guys to join in to pray and send that healing for one another. And anyone who is tuning into this later on, know that we are extending this out to you wherever you are, whatever it is that you need. Okay?
Okay. We're going to start with Natalka, who's looking for some support. She's praying for some support. She's really trying to use impeccable words. So we can lift that up for Natalka. Give her the support here to choose the right words and the right times. So lift that up. We claim that for Natalka. We have one from Jennifer, who is looking for healing in confidence and not letting self-doubt get in the way. Yes, Jennifer, that's a big one. We're sending this one right up. Let's claim this for Jennifer. Give her the healing and confidence. Get self-doubt out of there so that she can move forward every day strongly and in faith. We have a few people here with depression issues. So Vanessa is looking for healing for her brother's depression. And Megan is also looking for her brother's depression and her husband's best friends. So let's lift all three of these up. And anyone else out there who, if you're feeling depressed and you don't want to say it, just lift it up with us. So lift these up. Vanessa, Megan, brothers, friends. Let's lift this up and claim healing for them, for their depression, so that they can remove those shackles and step forward and claim what's rightfully theirs and live happy, free, full lives. This is for Jill, who'd like prayers for her mom, who's having serious eye issues. And the doctors are saying there is nothing medically they can do. So this one is Jill, Jill's mom, their families, that her eye gets the treatment it deserves, and anything that can be done is done, and healing is fast and effective. Let's put that up and claim this for Jill and Jill's mom. And Lola, simply asking for some healing. So Lola, we're sending you healing. We're lifting that up so that all of our members here can give you the healing that you need and are looking for, so that you can step forward stronger, better, just seize the day every day. So let's claim this healing for Lola. And we have Kimberly on TikTok praying that she comes through on the top from justice. So Kimberly's praying for justice. So we can lift her up. Pray for the justice she deserves. The justice she's fighting so hard for. Let's make sure that she gets that. So let's claim that justice for Kimberly. Yo, it's me. He's looking for prayers and healing for his brother. As is, there's a Pate too. Everyone's brothers here. We're all brothers. And let's treat each other like that. So let's send this healing to their brothers. Claim this healing and send that forth. And let them get through whatever it is they're going through, whether it's, physical, mental, both. Let's get them the healing they deserve. Okay, and that's all I have on the sheet here.
Okay, I just want to add one more before we wrap it up, unless the other reverends want to tune in here or chime in with another one. I just want to send out a special healing and prayer for strength, wisdom, guidance, intervention for those that struggle regularly with anxiety attacks, and emotional triggers, whether this be trauma triggers or others around them who instigate and try to use it as a weapon against them. That they overcome in those moments, that they find the tools necessary to get through it, not to get stuck, but to come out on the other side more empowered and to be able to use those skills for the rest of their lives and to help lift others up to do the same. we are done. Danny has one. Okay, good.
And also like to lift up in prayer anyone who has either lost a pet or whose pet is ill right now. At this moment during this pandemic, it feels like their pets have been extraordinarily comforting and loving and given support in ways that they hadn't even expected, but that they now are in the process of either having lost or having to make decisions about the humane way of being able to care for their pet, whether that be to care for them, allow them to go through surgery, or potentially make the ultimate decision that, although is the kindest, is the most difficult. So and knowing that they absorb so much of what we are going through, we lift everybody up who is dealing with and hurting from either the loss of or illness of a pet who are family. They are their children. We claim healing for them and comfort for them.
Amen. Okay. All right, amen. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We will see you next Sunday for Sunday service here, where we will talk about part 3 of the Faith Versus series. We will be talking about faith versus logic. How does your brain get in the way of doing what your intuition is telling you should do? How does your overthinking get in the way of your faith? We also do a midweek prayer service, so stay tuned for that. Feel free to follow, usually Wednesday evenings or Thursday evenings. If you are in need or know someone who needs a healing or prayer, you could join together with us for that. Okay, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. Thank you, Reverend Christina, Reverend Danny, Reverend Paul, and Spirit for being here with us. See you guys
So much.
next week. That was fantastic. Very uplifting. Thank you, everybody. There's so much more I think we